Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Elizabeth Holmes. When it comes to crime in Durham, both city and county leaders say things are heading in the right direction. Overall, violent crime is down compared to last year. But now Durham wants to take a new approach, specifically when it comes to tackling gun violence. WRAL's Monica Casey has been following these updates and joins us now by phone. Hi, Monica.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. So first, let's talk about these latest crime numbers in Durham. What are they? It sounds like we're actually seeing some pretty positive trends.
We are. So we have a lot of different numbers, and things are different in some areas of the city versus others. So it's important to remember the numbers that I'm talking about are an average over all of the city of Durham. But Durham police release weekly crime reports that drill down into this data. So when you look at the violent crime subtotal, that's a category that includes homicide, rape, robbery, aggravated assault. Violent crime as a whole in Durham compared to 2024 is down about 17 to 18%. So that is a big number. That's good to see. However, when you look at criminal homicide in particular, we have had 34 so far this year compared to 29 at this time last year. So homicides in particular are actually up about 17%. So we have a decrease in violent crime as a whole, but an uptick in homicides. Then if you look over at the shooting data, that's also giving us a more positive picture. This is year-to-date information. So when I compare the numbers to 2024, I'm not talking about all 12 months, but rather through that mid to late October time frame. The number of shootings in Durham so far this year are down. We've had 435 shooting incidents. That's compared to 530 last year. So almost 100 fewer shooting incidents this year compared to this time last year. We've also seen a smaller number of people shot. 185 were shot around this time last year. That number is 137 this year. So that is a good decrease to see as well. Durham police also break down the number of fatal versus non-fatal shootings. And even though fewer people have been shot, we have actually had the exact same number of fatal shootings. 25 people have died in shootings in Durham so far this year. And so while these numbers tell us different things, some positive, some negative, it's fair to say that crime and gun violence in particular are a big priority for city and county leaders here.
Right. And Durham City Council members and county commissioners met to discuss a plan to deal with gun violence earlier this month. What's on the table there?
Yeah, so city and county staff actually worked together on this plan with some outside groups as well to come to it together. And that's one thing already that makes it unique right there is the amount of collaboration. And so this is a 3-phase plan that they're talking about doing. Phase 1 would be basically, as the community safety director, Ryan Smith, explained, what do we do? What are the solutions that we want to implement here in Durham? That phase 1 would be in partnership with the Violence Reduction Center, and that would include a multi-day summit in Durham, bringing all of these different groups together to find out what they want to actually be done. Phase 2 involves multi-agency teams that would work on how to actually implement those solutions. City and county leaders were really focused during this discussion, as were city and county staff, on the need to have data around these solutions to make sure they are actually working. We have seen solutions sometimes implemented in Durham that didn't work for different reasons, and they want to make sure they are actually committing to solutions with plans in place to make sure they do work. Phase 3 would be a partnership with the Vera Institute to make sure that everyone is collaborating in an efficient and fair way on how they can come together to do all of this.
It seems like there are already some violence prevention groups in Durham that are doing this work already, right? So how does this change kind of what they do, or does it change any of what they do at all? Like, how does that play a role in all of this?
Yeah, so there are a lot of groups doing a lot of really good and difficult work in Durham on the city and county government side, on the nonprofit side, on the volunteer and the faith community side. There are a lot of people working on this issue. That is actually something that Durham Mayor Leonardo Williams has talked about a lot, that there are a lot of people doing good work. A lot of them either just don't have the resources to be able to scale up and impact more people, or maybe there are multiple groups that are dealing with a similar issue, and another issue is kind of falling by the wayside and maybe not being attacked in the same way. So Durham County has a program called Project Build that Durham County Commissioner Wendy Jacobs actually holds up as a great example of the county's success, and it's a interdisciplinary, multifaceted gang reduction initiative in Durham with one-on-one outreach to young people, helping them learn life skills, helping them learn they're not alone in the world. And that program has seen a lot of success. And so that's one example that might get looped into this broader, larger plan. This large three-part multi-phase approach is aiming to target gun violence and violent crime in a holistic way, firing on all cylinders. So it would likely bring in a lot of these other groups that are already doing this work so that they can work together and really just get even stronger. For example, the mayor actually has something called the Bowl City Future Fund, where he's worked to raise money to give to nonprofits that are doing this work to support them. It's possible that could be looped into this plan. One point to note with this three-phase approach is that right now, while there are solutions that have been discussed before, like community violence intervention, they're not yet talking about the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty of what they want to do. That is going to be part of this plan, that they can find this solution together. It's not one group saying, we are going to do this. It's all of the groups coming to the table to figure out what should be done.
Gotcha. All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. How did city and county leaders react to this proposal from the staff? What are they thinking about this?
It was a pretty positive interaction overall, reaction overall, and interaction. A few city council members and county commission members were basically saying, when can we get started? This is, for a lot of people, a life and death issue, and it needs to move forward quickly. And city and county staff do have a plan on that. Now, city and county leaders had ideas on how to make sure this proposal and this phased approach can succeed. A big focus was on accountability and making sure they are holding themselves accountable if something is not working. The goal of this approach is that they wouldn't get to that point, that these things will have been vetted and planned so thoroughly that they hopefully should work. But a couple commissioners and council members pointed out that need for accountability. But a lot of them said they are excited that they're working together in this way. The phrase "a long time coming" was used by an elected official. And another point another elected official, Mayor Pro Tem Mark Anthony Middleton, made was that Durham has codified how it deals with some issues, for example, affordable housing or pedestrian and cyclist safety, by hiring a Vision Zero coordinator. And he argues it's time for Durham to codify how we can respond to gun violence. So it was overall a pretty positive reaction to that proposal.
You mentioned, that some things in the past just didn't work. So I guess, how does this plan differ from maybe some past approaches that didn't work? And, who else is going to be involved kind of outside of, people who are already in Durham doing the work?
Yeah, I took that question to County Commissioner Wendy Jacobs because that was a thought I had because we have sat in a lot of meetings where crime in general and what can we do about crime has been discussed. And I asked her, what's different about this? And she says it's the collaboration. This is the city and county. These two groups have about 5 or 6 meetings a year together. But this is the two of these local governments sitting down together and really putting all hands on deck on what can be done. Jacobs acknowledged there have been successful and unsuccessful initiatives and programs, and sometimes the local governments or maybe different groups are working in silos, and that work can only be so powerful when it's only one group doing it. And so people coming together to do this work can make it stronger. That's their thought about this. And so in terms of who will be involved with this, obviously these two local governments, and they emphasize they intend to bring in, of course, Durham public schools that are in both the city and the county, and the local universities, the nonprofit community, the faith community. When I say all hands on deck, the idea is not just all hands that were elected, but all hands in the community on deck. But they're also looking at bringing in outside experts to help with this. So phase 1 involves the Violence Reduction Center out of the University of Maryland. That group works with different cities around the country on issues of how they can reduce violence. And phase 3 involves the Vera Institute, which is targeted towards making sure these different groups coming from maybe different directions can work together on a solution. The other big point that one of the commissioners, Commission Chair Netta Alam, made was on the need to engage young people. A lot of the city and county commissioners sit on other boards, whether they're focused on youth violence or gang reduction, or maybe even public health focused on maternity and maternal health. A lot of different initiatives coming together here, and that's where it comes into the holistic aspect. Alam pointed out the need to engage young people, saying that sometimes they've heard from young people that the adults might not know exactly what these young people need and what they're asking for. And so that was a big focus of this discussion as well.
So last question for you. Obviously, this all sounds really great. So when will we see this? When will this actually start, these phases? When can we expect to see kind of this really be in motion?
We hear a lot about how government takes a long time. This is going to happen fast, whether you believe things usually take a long time or not. We're in the end of October of 2025, and they plan for phase 1 to be in the works late 2025. There are only 2 months left, so we're going to see this happen quickly. That was one thing that Commissioner Jacobs said she was excited about, was this short timeline of getting things going. Phase 2 would start in the spring of 2026, and phase 3 would be in the winter and spring of 2026. These 3 phases won't necessarily be 1, 2, 3, nothing happening at the same time. There will be some overlap, especially when it comes to phases 2 and 3, but a lot of this is expected to happen really kind of within the next year. So we're going to see some changes, some discussions, some more meetings, and probably that multi-day summit with people from all over Durham and outside of Durham pretty soon.
Well, Monica, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening. If you've listened to this podcast on WRAL.com or the WRAL News app, you can also find it in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the show so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening.